Hello, everyone. I am Dion Cook from AVIXA, and welcome to Deploying a Large-Scale Digital Signage Network at Retail, Key Consideration, presented by Neil Jacobs and Joe Maxey. This webinar is brought to you by our sponsors today, Woven Media and TSI Touch. Before I hand the presentation over to Neil and Joe, I need to go over a couple of very quick housekeeping items. For everyone viewing this webinar live today, it qualifies for one CTS renewal unit for the CTSI, CTSD as well. Please allow up to 7 business days to view those on your transcripts. If you have any issues, please email my team directly at webinars@avixa.org. The webinar should last approximately 45 to 60 minutes, and all attendees have been placed on mute. If you have any questions during the presentation, please enter them in the Q&A window so today's moderators can address them at the end of the webinar. To access the Q&A window, move your cursor towards the bottom of the live stream video box and locate the Q&A icon and type away. But please be mindful that there's a separate menu for chatting. You will have access to this recorded webinar at avixa.org/webinars within about 5 to 7 business days. Gentlemen, please take it away.
Thank you. My name is Neil Jacobs. I appreciate it, Dion. My name is Neil Jacobs, and I'm the Director of Sales here at Woven Media. In way of introduction, I've worked in the digital signage, visual communications, and guest engagement space for almost 12 years now, across a couple of different companies. I've known Joe and the great people at TSI Touch for almost that long. And we've had the chance to work on some really great and fascinating projects together across many different verticals. Retail is a focus today, but we've also done a lot of great things across hospitality, corporate communications, employee engagement, and digital out of home. Joe?
Thank you, Neil. Yeah, it's my pleasure to be here as well. And I'm the Director of Sales here at TSI Touch. And I'll give you a brief introduction to our company. We cut our teeth in touchscreens. However, today I'll be talking about our logistics and kitting programs that we've put together.
Awesome. Getting into the agenda, what we want to do is first, I'm going to cover some of the keys to effective system design and solution development, but really the planning. We're going to talk about some piloting strategies that will get you off to a good start, and then how to ramp that up for a broader deployment. Then we're going to hand it over to Joe, and Joe's going to talk about the process of actually getting that equipment, sort of packaging up, kitting it, shipping it, making sure it gets to the right place, dealing with all the logistics. And then just before the Q&A, we're going to take some time to go over a real world case study for a project that we worked on in retail together. And that'll really show how everything can line up and go well when you prepare properly and go through all the steps that we're going to talk about today. I also wanted to mention we're highlighting key considerations for deploying a large-scale digital signage network in retail. But really, I think the consistent theme that you'll see here today is both preparation and partnership. It's the proper preparation and the attention to the little things that sets these projects up for success. And because the scale of a large scale or an enterprise or a large retail deployment, any little thing is magnified. So the planning prevents those errors. And then our proper partnerships help to manage the things that are outside the scope of your business with confidence and be able to feel good about the end result of your project. Also, I wanted to mention that we're focusing on retail for the purpose of today's talking points, because that's a really complex environment with a lot of moving parts and harsh environments and things like that. However, these key considerations and strategies that we'll speak to today would be applicable to any large-scale digital signage or visual communications network. I know we'd be happy to provide consultation for anyone on the webinar today that may want to review your strategy, talk about your network, or if anyone has an upcoming project, please feel free to reach out to either Joe or I. So who is Woven Media? Woven Media, we're a premier provider of visual communications and digital signage solutions. We work across almost all verticals, but we have a particularly good set of experience in the retail space. As a business, I think that our defining characteristic is our focus on our customers and helping them achieve their business objectives. And I think a lot of that will show today, but our product platform primarily consists of 3 pillars. We have a very robust content management platform that not only is one of the most capable CMS platforms out there, but it's really optimized for video at its core. Content is becoming more vibrant, video-centric, and this is usually where there's more heavy lifting required in a digital signage or visual communications network. Woven Manager offers a patented video encoding platform that's built into our CMS and can digest video from nearly any source and properly encode it to optimize the performance across the network and the impact of the content. We're also a little bit unique in that we have our own woven content, which is an enormous library of rights cleared content that allows our customers to create unique experiences within their visual communications networks without the need for going out to a separate content partner and adding expense or complication. And then finally, we do provide a full range of professional services to help ensure a successful and effective digital signage implementation for all of our customers. Joe?
Hi, yeah, so again, I'm Joe Maxey with TSI Touch. We actually specialize in touch solutions for commercial grade displays, both indoor and outdoor. We also provide protective solutions for video walls, as well as interactive solutions for video walls. We actually do create a lot of custom designs, which actually spawned our need for logistics and kitting solutions, which are a little bit more out of the box. And of course, I'll be talking about this more a little bit later. Back to you, Neil.
Awesome. So to kind of dive right in, right, what are some of the keys to effective system design and solution design to make sure that everything gets started and gets off the ground right? So the first key to effective design is really understanding the objectives and not just the requirements. In some ways, you have to begin with the end in mind in order to get to the right screen size or placements or formats. Ideally, at this stage, it should go all the way down to the content at that endpoint to ensure that any proposed screen location delivers value and has a benefit to either the shopping experience, the brand experience, or the bottom line, meaning driving sales. So right away, right off the bat, we want to be sure that we're asking questions like, does this improve the shopper experience, enhance the brand, or help us drive sales? Is it a needed location? And then, you know, the visibility of the screens from a distance or the placement of the screens based on that content, right? Shopper experience screens need to be visible from a distance so that there's an awareness of them. Product driving, category sales uplift screens, CPG screens, things like that need to be much closer to the product or category, either on the end cap or the aisle. So really understanding the objective helps you drive all of the other decisions, right? It helps us make the location work. It helps us make the placement of the screen work. And then we get into the environment a little bit and talk about things like, do we have spaces where we can't mount? Do we have to go with a ceiling mount for a certain location? If we have a location proposed for an end cap, does it require backing? Things like that. And then finally, in this early stage, we have the ability to get a little bit creative, right? I think there's some awesome creative and unique technologies that are available in the space today. And so this is where we can get a little bit creative and ask some questions like, would directional audio maybe enhance the experience or provide a measurable benefit, or something like projecting content onto other surfaces. But this is really where you can kind of get a little bit creative in this initial planning phase. And so the second consideration is budget. And I say budget is second, because I think it's always better to decide on the impact that you want to achieve and how you want to get there, and then work to, build within a budget, right? A clear vision for your location, your message, and your desired outcome is going to deliver your desired results. So then taking a look back at the budget and how to work into it is a second step. So you want to look for those trade-offs at this stage where you can reduce cost if necessary or as necessary, but not necessarily lose the impact. So you want to ask questions in this stage like, would a different screen size maybe work just as well here, but change the cost profile? Would one screen versus two screens, or would two screens versus a video wall? Is there a different mounting solution that might help us reduce some costs so that we can get the screen placements and the endpoint locations and the customer benefit that we're going for, and work within a budget? So the next sort of key piece, if you will, is the infrastructure. And I think the infrastructure is pretty straightforward. It deals a lot with your connectivity and cabling and electrical. But there is a lot to think about, right? I mean, obviously wired network reliability is the highest, But there's places where that's just not practical, or there's screen locations where that may not work. So again, you're going to have some of these trade-offs, but you need to make sure that everything is considered. Not only where the cabling goes and whether it's possible to cable to a location, maybe whether a location needs to be wired or wireless, but who's actually going to be doing that work. Does the brand or the customer have resources to do that work? Is that a piece of the component that we can provide, or TSI can provide? Does that need to be outsourced to local contractors? Those types of things really all need to be thought of and addressed early on in the process. Power is another key. A lot of times installs take place where power hasn't gotten there. And we'll talk a little bit about that site survey and that preparation that goes into that piece of it later. But knowing and understanding the power requirements and making sure, again, who's going to be doing that power work, where is that going to come from, where is it going to go to, is really key. And then finally, to bring system and solution design sort of all together, you want to get granular into the content strategy and look at the potential to monetize your network. Right. So back in one of the first slides, I talked about how you want to begin with the end in mind, and know the impact that you want to achieve, and that the impact justifies the expense of the screen install. So now we're getting into the details of how you put that experience together. So in this area, we want to make sure you have the right CMS, the media players, the content strategy. So we're going to ask questions around content length and the content resolution. What's the update frequency of the content? Who's going to be producing that content? Will you be relying on professional services and creative services from Woven Media? Do you have your own in-house creative agency? Who's going to be producing that content? And then particularly in the retail environment, we want to ask questions about how to monetize that network. And we want a network ideally to become a revenue generator for the brand and not a line item in the ledger. So we want to really be aware of things like, campaign and inventory management, proof of play reporting back to your advertising partners and monetization partners to show that they have been present on the network. And then finally, obviously, as we will talk a lot about today, selecting the right partners and making sure that you have the right people in place to do the job. And there's a lot of logistics that go beyond, kind of today, I'm talking a lot about the preparation or the pre-planning stage. And Joe's going to talk a lot about the logistics. And those two really rely on one another in order to be successful. So now we've done the legwork. We've really understood the objectives and the outcomes that we're trying to achieve. We've marked our screen placements. We've dialed in the correct formats that fit within our budget, planned for our infrastructure, mapped out our content strategy. And so now we need to pilot this and make sure that all of this planning meets with reality. So pilots are a great opportunity to identify things that are harder to know in the planning stages, right? Any shipping backlogs or equipment shortages or anything like that bubbles up to the surface in the pilot stage. So it's really important, but the most important thing I think about a pilot stage is to start small. Scaling is definitely step two. So the first small scale pilot is really about confirming the solution that we've designed meets the reality. And if there's something that we want to change, we want to keep it manageable. So we want to keep the initial pilot to a very small number of locations where we can do some stress testing or some testing on the design and have it be somewhat malleable. Next stage is to go a little bit more broad. And this actually is where we're going to be more like a stress test. Right now, we're going to see more like 30 to 50 locations. The key objectives that we're going to be really defining and working on in this broader pilot phase is, like I said, stress testing to make sure that everything works and is a repeatable process. But really defining your site surveys and the information that you need for every install to be successful, coordinating installation and logistics with your partners, and really identifying any opportunities for improvement before this thing goes, huge or broad. And then finally, you want to work with the customer, the retailer, the partner to make a rollout schedule that's going to work, that meets their sales and opening schedules and things like that, or if we're doing it after hours, whatever that requirement is. But the most important part of the pilot phase, and I can't say enough about this, is to make sure that we're documenting and planning so that we can have a repeatable process and that we can come away from the pilot process with written deliverables for everybody involved in the project. And I mean, from the project management side to the site survey people to the store managers at every store where we're going to be rolling out products. You want to really create a defined process that can be shared with each of the people involved in the project so they understand their role and they understand everyone else's role. So the documentation piece is, in my mind, probably the most key part of the pilot phase. And making sure that that piece is successful. And then finally, talking a little bit more, at least lastly from my side, some tips for key success in the broader deployment, right? And I think the first thing is to be sure that you have a solid deployment schedule that's communicated with all of the parties. And it needs to be realistic. It needs to take into account all of the things that we learned from the pilot, right? If we've learned things about shipping or about the real life condition of equipment or procurement, we need to make sure that we build a schedule that takes those things into account. You want to set yourself up for success in building out this, rollout schedule so that you have everything accounted for. The site survey questions, we'll really dial those in a lot better because this is where the site survey answers are going to determine what we package up, what we kit, and how we set up the install requirements for each location. And then obviously, like I said, using that documentation that you gathered from the pilot phase to create the proper and detailed installation guides for all of the downstream teams. The final piece of it, and I think this is really, really important as well, is because we're talking about large scale retail deployments today or enterprise digital signage, visual communications networks. And the right tools for success are a huge piece of it. So as I said earlier, everything gets magnified at scale. So using the right resources and the right platforms, such as a Zendesk or other platforms, to automate the project tasks and the project tracking and the status reports on the project to all parties involved has been a huge asset in all of the digital signage companies I've worked for and visual communication solutions that we've rolled out. It really does set everything up for a good, successful implementation. And at that, I think it's handed over to Joe.
Thank you, Neil. I appreciate it. So yeah, I'm going to talk about a little bit about our procurement process. And what that really entails is actually really understanding the supply chain of our manufacturers, the people we work with. For example, dealing with one of the display manufacturers, we know that sometimes the product comes out of China, sometimes it comes out of Mexico. And it's really understanding not only where their products come from, but also how they're delivered to us. So do we take a truckload? Do we take just a couple pallets? How is their intake going to affect us? And then we actually adhere to that and make sure that we are giving appropriate lead times to our manufacturers as well as our customers as well. We also do follow up continuously with everybody we work with, only because we do know that things change and they change a lot, especially in this given state where the supply chain is a little difficult right now. Working with these guys to make sure that they understand our challenges and we understand their challenges. And that helps foster for a better relationship between us and the manufacturers. When dealing with retailers, there's a lot of fixtures that need to be maintained. So when talking to these, and specifically for this rollout that Neil and I have actually been working on, we have actually worked with Legrand primarily and understanding their supply chain. And one thing that we came to actually understand was that their supply chain is very mixed. Not only do they have a lot of stuff coming from overseas, but they have a lot of products that's produced domestically as well. So we want to be able to actually not understand what their lead times are, but what our delivery is expected to be. Unfortunately, some of the carriers that they've worked with have just given us dates that weren't actually maintainable or weren't actually feasible. So we actually came to the conclusion that, we need to have a little bit of more stock. We actually need to have the right amount of inventory on hand to meet our schedule and to make sure that everybody at the retailers that we're working with understand this. So we actually work with these guys almost continuously to make sure that everything is delivered on a timely basis. So you see our last bullet point there, which is be able to adapt on the fly. And what this means is that, what can we do should problems happen in order to make sure that the install still happens? So I'll give you a little example. Can you go back there, Neil? Sorry. Thank you. I'll give you an example of one of the things that we've done. So for example, in this particular install, we actually had a HDMI port, which was facing the back of the monitor. Well, we found out that we couldn't actually use our traditional HDMI cable. We actually had one that actually had a right angle adapter on it. So what we did is we actually went out, found these right angle adapters, make sure that they're all put together, and we actually put them together and assembled them for the installers to actually do should that substitution need to happen. We actually had another case where we had black poles. Unfortunately, the project called for white poles. So what do we do? How do we think outside the box? How do we make sure that the customer still gets these white poles that they so desperately wanted? Well, one of our guys actually was able to, he actually does painting on the side. And that's when we decided to, you know what? We'll actually go outside of our wheelhouse and we'll actually paint these parts for them. And we actually did. We actually painted the parts and we actually delivered it to the club and made that delivery on time. So when I talked about adapting on the fly, that really is what sets TSI apart from everybody else, is being able to make sure that these parts are delivered when they want, how they want, and where they want. So who do we select as freight carriers? Well, one, we want to make sure that we have carriers with on-time delivery history. And I'll tell you, a lot of them say 90+%. The ones that we work with, right around 97, 98%. However, it's always that 3% that really kind of sticks in everybody's craw, or that really sticks in their mind. So what we do is we actually make sure that we work with a carrier that actually has a strong internal support team. And what that means is we actually talk with a person over there, not with a 1-800 number or anything like that, but we actually have people that we work with daily. They know us, we know them, and they actually know the importance of this project that we work on. So they know that if a shipment's late, not does it push out the store managers who have to stay late at night to make sure these installations happen, but also the installers who are away from their families and doing these deployments overnight. So these are actual people that we're working with. And so when a shipment's late, it affects everybody's schedule and it trickles down to the highest levels, unfortunately. So what we do is we make sure that there's full transparency between us and Woven as well as our end customers. Because unfortunately, good and bad things will happen, but it's how we actually handle those situations which sets us apart from everybody else. So what is the action plan that we put together? So for example, there are certain things that are out of our control. Like for example, weather delays happen. Can you go back, Neil? Sorry, I'm seeing a different. There you go. For example, weather delays will happen. What do we do though? We actually try to, since we track every shipment every day, almost hourly, we're able to update everybody in terms of should any changes need to happen, which of course is last second scenario. Anyway, last point there is we actually do photograph the pallet on every side before it's loaded and before it's actually sent out. The reason we do this is basically for insurance reasons. We actually do insure every single pallet before it goes out and before it actually is received by the end user. So should damage happen, we actually handle the insurance claim from beginning to end. And what we also do is we actually just send out a new product automatically without having anyone else deal with the shippers except for us. And that lends for a more successful implementation as well as installation. Now you can move forward, Neil. So what do we do that's a little different in terms of warehousing, kitting, and consolidation? So the first point there is we create and generate reports to show inventory stock status levels. What we've actually done for Woven is we've actually created reports that actually show how many stores can be affected by a certain stock or a certain product. So for example, if we have widget A in stock, but we know that widget B, we can only perform 5 stores with, we know where the problem's at. We also can actually tell you how much inventory we have and how many implementations, how many installations we can actually really do. And that actually helps us maintain those stock levels and actually let us know where that red light is going to be going to be forming in terms of what product's going to give us issues. Consolidating areas to one warehouse to streamline the process and maintain inventory control. Sorry guys, I'm reading that a little bit late there. So what we do is we actually have an area of our warehouse that's dedicated to woven media and to woven media customers. So unfortunately, changes do happen. Stores are not all the same. So changes actually do happen kind of on the fly and last second. So if we're able to load products and pallets quickly, we're able to actually make changes kind of almost on the fly, almost day of shipment. Do we prefer to do this? No, absolutely. We'd love every store to be exactly the same. But unfortunately, we do know that unfortunately changes will happen, and being able to adapt to those changes is really what sets us apart from everyone else. The third point there, organization. This is actually organization for the installers. We want to make sure that their out-of-the-box experience with us is excellent. So what we do is we make things as easy as possible for every installer, whether it's putting a cable onto a monitor or whether it's actually taking an inventory of what's actually on that pallet. We've actually developed an application, whether it be on an iPhone or Droid or whatever it may be, where they're actually able to tell us what has actually been received by them. So if we know that a cable is missing, we can actually go back and we will be notified immediately. We'll be able to help them either A, get a cable locally or send one out post haste. So in order to make everything, we actually make each box labeled with everything that is in said box. So the installers know exactly what they're getting when they get on site. We actually go down to very almost ridiculous detail in terms of having CAD drawings ready for each pallet that we're putting out there. And we do this not only for weight and load balance, but we also do this to minimize any breakage that may occur. At the end of the day, we really want to understand what everybody's goal is and to make sure that everybody has a great installation. Can we go to the next slide, Neil? So again, I talked about this before, but we assign personnel to track each shipment almost daily. Not only they're talking to daily, they're actually talking to the installers, the planners, and actually the site receivers. One thing we found out about retail is that if a receiver is not expecting products to come, a lot of times they'll send it away. If they don't know that it's actually for an installation, if it doesn't represent something that goes out on their floor and to be sold later, they will actually turn it away. So we've actually, in partnership with Woven Media, we were actually able to get all the people that were installed and are involved in each installation. And we were able to actually work with everybody individually to make sure that not only should this shipment be received, but that it gets prioritized amongst other shipments. So we do actually communicate with these people daily. One of the things that we did to really help understand the installation is we actually did go out to an install where we actually worked with the installations or with the install teams. And we asked them questions and we queried them. We asked what would be easier, what would be harder? Do you actually, would this help you? And a lot of times, sometimes they said, no, we got it. We know what we're doing. A lot of times they actually said, yeah, that would help us. And that actually helped us tailor our kitting program to help them become more successful with their installations. At the end of the day, again, we don't want to be seen as a supplier or vendor. We actually want to be seen as a partner or as an extension of Woven Media. And as long as everybody wins and is successful, that is what's most important to us. With that, I'll go back to Neil.
Yeah, no, Joe, I think that's a great point. I mean, I think we take the exact same approach, and that's why it's been such a great partnership. So if you can stick around, Joe, I think what we wanted to do next was talk a little bit about a real world example and then get into the question and answer. So for a real world kind of case study of which I think is a good example of how all of this, works properly, right? When you do the groundwork, when you do proper preparation and you have the proper partnerships in place, how can it really go well? And this has been a great example of that. So this is the implementation that we worked with at TSI on at Sam's Club. It's currently one of the largest digital signage deployments at retail. We are deployed chain-wide, and we do a wide variety of services and solutions within the Sam's Club. Part of it is the TV wall and electronics wall that we service or provide content and content management for. And so because of the multiplier on the TV wall, the overall scope of the network is something like 25,000 screens. We have new installs going currently in 270 locations or in various stages of completion with 270 locations. And the overall scope of these projects are member services screens, cafe menu boards, as I mentioned, the electronics and TV wall, and then we have applications in the tire and battery center as well. By the end of this year, the total scale of the rollout will be 6,400 media players. And a lot of these applications, as we can see, are multi-screens mounted in complex fashions. And then finally, the sort of coolest thing or the wow factor piece that I talked about earlier is the floor projected graphics that we're doing. And we're doing those both for monetization of the network, as you can see in the bottom right, as well as for branding and store efficiency applications, as you can see on the slide just above that. So the setup that I'm giving there is that this is a massive digital signage visual communications network. It's broadly deployed in over 400 stores to over 400 stores across the country, and 270 so far, sorry. And it represents a lot of complexity, right? It represented a lot of complexity because like most projects, it wasn't just a huge project to roll everything out at once. A lot of these applications were added on after initial applications were deployed to clubs. And like happens in a lot of these deployments, some of these applications, we're in the middle of rolling out, the TV wall solution across all of the stores, and the next solution was already ready to roll out, right? So there's a lot of complexity. There's a lot of moving parts. And particularly in the warehouse club environment, there are forklifts and environmental considerations and birds that get into the store and all sorts of great things to make sure that you had to take in mind. And so, Joe, do you want to talk a little bit about kind of how we came together with TSI to make sure that we were able to handle the procurement, logistics, and so forth to make this operation a success?
Yeah, absolutely. And, it's great looking at these pictures here because everything looks so clean and so neat and so nice. Content looks amazing and wonderful. And what's funny is the work going in behind these screens. I mean, these bombs are probably, 30 to 40 products long, and so to get it to look so clean and so perfect, again, in the back end, takes so much effort from so many different people in order to make sure that this comes in together. And and so some of the things that we do, again, in the back end, people do not see in the front end. But
yeah, right.
The fact that it looks great and looks, perfect like that just is a testament to what we do, really.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, the logistical piece and the kitting piece in particular, and like I said, I've worked in this industry across a few different companies. And that is always one of the biggest challenges, right? I mean, the labeling the boxes, the photos, the detailed instructions that you guys provide on every piece that shows up, really is, it's key. I mean, it just makes these implementations and these things at scale go so much easier, right?
And I will tell you that, Neil, that I've had several customers outside of us, go through Sam's Club and actually mention that they saw this project and they see how eye-catching it is. And they notice how the content really pops and how it really did make a difference in their shopping experience.
Yeah. And it's another webinar. It's for sure. And it's one that is already available through Open Media. But one of the key pieces of the Sam's Club implementation is the phenomenal partnership that they've undertaken with us to really monetize the network. And Sam's has done an unparalleled job of creating a digital signage visual communications network that's actually a revenue generator instead of that line item on a ledger. They have a great team in place to monetize and partner with CPG goods and various vendors around the store to really monetize this network. And then they use the woven content to really flesh out that, inform and inspire, delight and distract type of experience within the store, so that it's not just a barrage of advertising content. So it's really been a cool implementation. Not only does it look so great and is so clean, but it's really, I think, at least in my 12 years in this industry, digital signage has been a thing that a lot of people think they need to communicate in certain ways, but they view it as a cost. Again, as we talked about budget earlier, everybody talks about the cost of digital signage, and not nearly enough about the benefits, the things that can be gained from a digital signage network, and really the potential to outright monetize it. I mean, I've done a lot of work in the hotel space, particularly in the retail space. These are all great opportunities to have your own little captive out-of-home advertising network based on the people that you work with and the vendors that you work with in your particular industry or space. And Sam's Club's done a great job with that. I think that that covers our content, Dion. If we want to start into the Q&A session, I think that hopefully we have a whole bunch of Q&A and we can have a really interactive and involved discussion.
Okay, Neil, I actually do have a question for you. Is there a such thing as a full stack solution for retail digital signage?
I mean, yeah, I think woven media provides a pretty full stack, right? Because I guess full stack the term full stack can be used in a lot of ways today. It's kind of like cloud, but the full suite of products that we provide goes from planning and preparation, like we talked about today, through your content management needs, video encoding, network build out, professional services, creative services, solution design, and even out to partnering to logistics and equipment procurement with TSI Touch, and even out to the endpoint installation. So I think that at least in my mind, that represents a fairly full stack of solutions for a visual communications network.
I saw a slide near the end of something about floor projections. Is that considered digital signage?
Yeah, I think, yeah, I mean, it is, right? Because it's powered by our CMS, right? And that, or by our content management solution. And that's kind of, in my mind, at least, the key piece that sort of is a network, makes a visual communications digital signage network, whatever you want to call it, however you want to term it. So being managed from our CMS, it's just a really creative endpoint design to allow us to do a lot more with content. The projection screen frees us from format. So as you may have seen on the floor projection in the Sam's Club, where they had the arrows and so forth, you're not restricted to 16:9 or a certain aspect ratio, or even a certain shape like a rectangle or a square. With the projectors and the laser projectors that we're using today, we're able to change the shape of the content and project it in different ways. But at the end of the day, it's just an endpoint. It's just a media player and a device playing content from our content management system.
All right. Can the woven media software stream content without needing a media player?
Yes. So there's a couple of different ways to do that. I mean, and it goes back to the conversation that we had earlier on about wired versus wireless, or the point I made earlier about wired versus wireless, right? So you have tiers of reliability or levels of reliability, right? And your infrastructure planning, your wired network is your highest level of reliability, because you're not going to experience fluctuations in wireless. So obviously a player device at a screen or projection location that can cache that content is going to be your most reliable. But we do have a feature within our content management system that will allow us to stream playlists, content, templates, etc., down to a URL essentially. So with the proper smart TVs, with the proper devices that have the newer technology built into them, we can absolutely stream down to a device without, or to a screen location without a player device. And then we also have a product for more the sort of active end of the market, if you will, called Woven Stream that does that, just solely does the streaming piece of it.
All right. So when I look at the Sam's Club example, how long does it normally take to deploy a large scale network like that?
I mean, it really depends. There's a ton of variables that go into these things, right? Joe probably has some perspective as well, but like it depends on supply chain factors and a lot of other factors, the store being ready, the infrastructure being ready, the wiring and cabling and data and so forth. But generally speaking, once everything is up and running and we're rolling out stores, on sort of a rubber stamp type model, we're able to push out in the neighborhood of 50 to 60 stores or clubs a month. So a little slower getting off the ground and making sure that is a well-oiled machine. But that's the area that we're at now where we can produce.
All right, I got you. All right, hey Joe, not to leave you out, but what lead times are you currently seeing for equipment like displays and media players, given the global supply chain issues that we're seeing?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I'll let you know, yeah, we're definitely not immune to any of the supply chain issues that are out there right now. I will tell you that we do have some very creative people and creative buyers, as well as we've had to get executives involved, and they've actually really kind of almost mitigated a lot of the supply chain issues that we've been seeing. However, with that being said, a lot of it is dependent on size. For example, if you ask me if I can get an 86-inch monitor, that's not a problem. No problem. Get you one tomorrow. However, you need something that's more in the 49 or 50-inch range. That's a little bit tougher. So unfortunately, we are not immune, and we do see those issues as well. But again, talking with the manufacturers, going through forecasts with them, letting them know up front what's coming down the pipe and what we're expecting to see has actually enabled us to actually go through this rollout with Sam's Club with minimal impact to schedule.
Okay, I've got a question here. It's can this solution be deployed on a high-rise building as digital signage? I guess this question would be for you, Neil.
And I think it'd be hard to know for sure. I believe they might be asking about the projection solution. But I mean, yes, there are solutions for exterior presentation of content on the outside of buildings. There's a couple of examples here locally where I live. Our content management solution can push out that content to, a wide variety of formats. My concern about projection, exterior projection like that would obviously be the light factor. I think that if that is the question that was being asked, is whether the projection that we were talking about can be done exterior. I think the light conditions would not be optimal or would not allow for that. But there are a number of different ways, from LED films on windows to actual physical displays that I've seen attached in arrays on the exterior of buildings, even in very large format. There's a building here that has a digital display, almost like a waterfall that goes down like a 17-story building, and they can change that content at different times of year and do things like that with it. But it's an architectural feature of the building. So it really be a great opportunity for whoever asked that question to reach out to us and let's sit down and do a quick evaluation, talk a little bit more about what you're thinking, because there's a number of ways to do that kind of thing.
Okay. What do customers need to know about their responsibilities and preparation in order for implementations to be successful?
I can take a stab at that, and Joe, you can add anything if you want to. I mean, I think the most important thing to know is that they have some responsibilities to make sure that it's successful, right? That there's going to need to be some coordination with the in-store unit, the management team, the regional teams, and so forth, to make sure that everybody knows they have some responsibilities. And then, to the point that I've made a couple of times, I think that that proper documentation, that thorough, detailed documentation that helps them understand what's going to be coming, and really more of the details of that responsibility, right? So once you understand that you do have a role to play in this project, the clear communication of that role and what's expected of you in order to make this all go smooth and what we need done before we show up, those kind of things, I think helps them understand that role better.
Yeah, let me add to that, Neil, just a little bit. So from a logistics perspective, if I could say just one thing, planning, and planning. Now that's three things, but that really kind of details how important it really is. You mentioned that we're, doing 50 to 60 screens a month. 50 to 60 clubs a month at our peak, which is very true. That does not happen overnight. So the more planning, the better, for sure.
Okay. Is there access to a display live stream, i.e. capturing shop floor visitors as they walk past the screens?
Yeah, I mean, there's a number of solutions. It's not something we've deployed at Sam's yet, or in this particular case study. There are solutions that I've worked on where cameras on the displays connected to the CMS or other software are used in various capacities, right? We've had them be used in capacities of audience measurement in coordination with other partners, which I think was kind of towards the question that was being asked there. But we've also been able to, in other projects that I've worked on, been able to use cameras and sensors and things like that to identify and show a certain type of content, right? So the concept behind that is not to get too invasive into people's privacy, but to be able to, maybe show massage content to my wife when she walks into a hotel, and tea times for me when I walk into a hotel. So, or in the retail environment to target the consumer packaged goods advertising and marketing based on who's walking in the door. So there's a couple of ways you can do it. You can do just general counts of who's walking past the signage, but you can get a little bit more data that you can use to trigger content and to trigger playlists to make that experience a little bit more customized as well.
Okay, if I wanted to put a network like this in my stores, but don't have my own creative agency, the Woven Media provide creative and production services also?
Yeah, we have a full creative department, and we do production services, and it's definitely a phenomenal creative assets that we have in a creative department. So there's really good work that comes out of that group. In an enterprise level like this, I think a lot of times there's other creative groups involved, and again, in the spirit of cooperation and partnership that we're talking about today, I think it's great because our creative team that's very strong can also get involved with your creative team or even with your brand team to really help deliver on that, right? If your creative team has a specialty but is not so involved in kind of that ancillary inform and inspire content, we can definitely help out with creating that while your brand team is focused on maybe your brand messaging, that kind of stuff.
How fast can you change or update content in the field?
Like through our content management, make sure I understand the question. I think what the question is asking is like a change or an ad goes into our content management system. How quickly can that be changed out in the field to, let's say, the Sam stores? And it's really almost instantaneous. It's basically the speed of the internet, right? Our content management solution can make those changes immediately, and as soon as the internet can update the player devices at the location. And generally speaking, there's an update interval that you can set. So it might say update every 5 minutes or something like that. But it's very, very quick. It's almost instantaneous, and truly could be instantaneous if you wanted to set the update interval that way.
Okay, if I want to monetize my network but don't have the resources to sell ads, can Woven Media help with that?
Yeah, I mean, again, to the spirit of preparation and partnership today, we definitely have some phenomenal partners in the monetization, endemic, and programmatic ad spaces that have been, extremely helpful to our client base and, putting inventory onto the displays where they maybe didn't have a sales team or a monetization team. So there's a lot of great ways that you can monetize a network without necessarily having to, stand up a sales team and go out and try to, get ads from your partners or your consumer packaged goods vendors. There's a lot of different ways to sort of approach that, and we'd be happy to help.
Okay, that appears to be all for the questions. So I'd like to thank you both, Neil and Joe, and I'd like to thank everyone so much for joining us on today's webinar, Displaying a Large-Scale Digital Signage Network at Retail, Key Considerations. This recording will be available on AVIXA's website at avixa.org/webinars within about 5 to 7 business days. And your one CTS, CTSD, and CTSI renewal unit will be applied to your transcripts within those 7 business days. If you have any trouble with that, please contact my team directly at webinars@avixa.org. And just an important side note for CTS holders, If you've registered for this webinar with an email address other than the one that's on file for you, you won't actually get credit for attending. We can correct it on the back end. However, simply email your account rep and let them know that you used the wrong email address when you registered, and we'll get it corrected for you on the back end. So again, I'd like to thank today's sponsors, Woven Media and TSI Touch, and a huge thank you to our presenters, both Neil and Joe, for helping us to understand large-scale digital signage in retail. We hope you've enjoyed this. Please stay safe and make it a great day, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.